Hello BookTube! This is Brecky from Brecky Writes, and this is Brecky Reads. It's time for my January wrap-up. I read 16 books in January, which is probably a record for me. 7 of them were audiobooks, which is also probably a record for me. So let's get started. The first book that I read in the month of January was The Martian by Andy Weir. The Martian follows astronaut Mark Watney as he is left on Mars when his crew escapes from a storm, and he has to try to find a way to survive using science and sarcasm and duct tape. I loved the audiobook of this. I thought the audiobook really brought the story to life. As someone who doesn't really do science, I enjoyed having a narrator explain the science as though he was explaining it to me, and also bring humor and bring the sarcasm and the wit of Mark Watney to life. I thought the audiobook was really well done, and I really enjoyed the story and would recommend it to everyone. If you are thinking of getting into audiobooks or getting into fiction audiobooks and you don't know where to start, listening to The Martian is definitely a great beginning place. I gave this 4.5 stars. The next books that I finished in the month of January were the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments series, City of Bones, City of Ashes, and City of Glass, all by Cassandra Clare. I really enjoyed these. These are action-packed stories that keep you on the edge of your seat from the first page to the last page. This is the first of 2 interlocking trilogies in the Mortal Instruments series, and I literally read one a day in a 3-day marathon read. These books follow the story of Clary Frey and her best friend Simon Lewis. As Clary discovers that she is a shadow hunter, there is a wonderfully, deviously bad guy named Valentine who is both horrendously evil but also morally gray and a fascinating bad character. There are twists and turns and ins and outs, and they will definitely keep you gripped in the story. I gave these 5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I read in the month of January was another audiobook. It's Accidental Saints by Nadia Bolz-Weber. Accidental Saints is a memoir following the unlikely pastor of a church called House for All Sinners and Saints in Denver. Nadia had left the Christian church when she was young, became an alcoholic and a drug addict, and then through a bunch of series of things in her life found her way into the Lutheran church and has created a progressive, welcoming, and inclusive church in Denver. And this is a look at what it means to be a pastor when you really maybe don't like people, and that is totally Nadia. Nadia is grumpy and sarcastic and swears a lot, and all of that comes through in Accidental Saints, and it kind of reminds you that religion isn't just made up of holy and perfect people, but actually people who swear and fail at things. I loved the audiobook because Nadia reads it herself, and all of her humor and her crankiness comes through, and in that it is more raw and more human and reminds us that, again, religious people are people just like everyone else. If you're Christian or if you're sort of spiritual but not religious but would be open to Christian-y things, this is a great book. I recommend the audiobook because Nadia, like I said, is grumpy and cranky and wonderful, but this is a wonderful, wonderful read, and I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read was another audiobook I listened to on a flight coming back from Texas, and that is Evolving in Monkey Town, and this is written by Rachel Held Evans. Rachel Held Evans is known for having a progressive blog that followed her as she left evangelicalism and joined the progressive Christian movement. However, Evolving in Monkey Town felt scattered, and the audiobook version was not great. Rachel Held Evans recorded this in her house, and her reading of it is really flat, which is surprising because I've seen her give talks and she's quite animated, and when she reads her audiobook it is almost monotone and actually kind of ruined the book for me. I gave this a 3 out of 5 stars because I think if I had read it rather than listened to it, I would have enjoyed it more, but definitely not my favorite book of the month. The next book was another audiobook, and that is I Am America and So Can You by Stephen Colbert. I loved this. It was hilarious, got me laughing. It's a series of vignettes about how you can be more American, with Stephen Colbert continuing to play the satirical conservative character. He has since given that up, and you can tell that this book is dated. There are some references to things that are no longer accurate just because of time, but if that doesn't bother you, this is a fun and funny book. Would be a great listen for a long road trip. Another great thing about this book is he has a cast that comes in and does little bits and pieces here and there, little Stephen Speaks for Me, where they play characters that are in favor of Stephen Colbert's satirical platform, and these include people like Samantha Bee and Jon Stewart, who he worked with on The Daily Show. If you like Stephen Colbert's humor, if you liked The Colbert Report, you will really, really like I Am America, and so can you. I gave this 3.5 stars. The next 5 books I read were The Spiderwick Chronicles by Holly Black and Tony DiTerlizzi. Now, I only own 2 of them. The rest of them I read on my e-reader, but I adored this. This was such a great children's story. The Spiderwick Chronicles follow the Grace children, Mallory, who is the older sister, who's about 13 when the books open, and twin brothers, Jared and Simon, who are 9, as they have to leave their home in New York City and move out to their great aunt's house out in the country. And once they arrive there, they discover that it is infested with fairies. One of the twins, Jared, finds a field guide that his great-great-uncle had written about all the fairies, and all kinds of shenanigans and hijinks ensue once they find the field guide. Each of these books is between 100 and 120 pages, so they aren't long, and they also have illustrations, like this, for example. I found these a really great lower middle grade read. They were fun, they were fast. I think I read all 5 of them in 2 or 3 nights. They were just a lovely, refreshing read. So if you're looking for something that is light, that is fun, or something to read to an 8 or 9-year-old, The Spiderwick Chronicles are great. And I gave each of these 4 out of 5 stars. The next book I finished in January was another audiobook, and that is I'm a Stranger Here Myself by Bill Bryson. I'm a Stranger Here Myself is a collection of his magazine column that was printed in the UK, but follows his return to the United States. He and his wife lived in the US for about 4 or 5 years, and he chronicles what it's like to come back to the US and rediscover things and kind of notice how things have changed. Now, I really enjoyed this. I like Bill Bryson's sarcastic wit and the fact that he has a very dry sense of humor, but the only downside is it's really dated. This book was published in 1998, and most of the references are from the early and mid-90s, and while I remember the early and mid-90s, I was still a kid, and there were things that went totally over my head. There were references to movie stars and to political things that I just had no concept of, and that kind of dragged the book for me. That being said, it was a great audiobook to listen to because Bill Bryson is hilarious. Overall, because it's a little bit dated, I gave I'm a Stranger Here Myself 3 out of 5 stars. The next book that I finished in January was another audiobook, go figure, and it's You're Never Weird on the Internet, Almost, by Felicia Day. Now, if you're on YouTube, it's very likely that you've at least heard of Felicia Day, but just in case you've missed out, Felicia Day was the writer and sort of director and stars in The Guild, which was the first written for YouTube YouTube series, and it follows a bunch of gamers who are part of the Guild. And this book chronicles not just how that came to happen and how it is she fell into making videos specifically for YouTube, but sort of her growing up. Felicia Day was homeschooled, not for religious reasons, but because her mom was a hippie, and this sort of unschooling, very strange upbringing meant that she was just weird, and unlike most kids who go to high school and get the weird knocked out of them, Felicia Day embraced her weird. She went to college on a violin scholarship and double majored in violin performance and math, which is kind of odd, and then decided to move to Hollywood. This book was fabulous. Felicia Day reading it makes it so much better. She's funny, she tells boner jokes, but it's not just a funny story of her upbringing. There are also some really poignant parts. Felicia Day suffered from depression and anxiety as her fame kind of exploded on YouTube. She also talks about Gamergate and what that experience was like for her as a woman who spoke out in defense of the women who were being attacked. I can't recommend this book enough to folks who are here on BookTube and who are involved in new media of any kind. It's a really great look at what it means to be in the frontier of presenting yourself and being out there on the internet and kind of owning your weird. I found it really exciting for me as someone who is just starting my BookTube channel. I gave this book a 5 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. I really suggest the audiobook. It was wonderful. The next book that I finished in January was my final audiobook of the month, and that is Anna and the French Kiss by Stephanie Perkins. Now, I will say I don't really like YA contemporary romancy books, like that is not my jam at all, but I was recommended this by several friends, and it happened to be available to listen to on audiobook through my library, so I thought, no harm, no foul, I'll give it a chance. And I'm really glad I did. Anna and the French Kiss follows Anna, who is sent away to boarding school in Paris by her father for her senior year of high school. She is not happy about this. She is really reluctant to go. She's having a hard time making friends. Anna's also a really interesting character because she writes movie reviews and wants to be a professional movie reviewer, and so this is a place of solace as she's shipped away to a new country and has to kind of make her way navigating a new high school and new friend groups, and of course, a new boy. Anna is in an ongoing back and forth, not relationship with Etienne, who has a girlfriend, and their relationship and how that impacts their friend group is the major plot line of the story. One of the things I loved about this book was that the angst that was within it felt really real. It reminded me of feelings I had when I was in high school and early college and how you negotiate friendships. This book caught me by surprise. I did not think I would love it, but I did. I power listened through this book. I thought I would just listen to it back and forth on my commute, but I spent a whole Saturday just listening to this book because I really could not get enough. Even if you don't think of yourself as a YA romance contemporary kind of person, I would check this one out. Again, it took me by surprise. I really loved it. This was a 4 out of 5 stars for me. I just loved this book so much, and I want to read the companion series now. Stephanie Perkins did such a great job, and she talks about Atlanta, which is where I'm from, so it's a special place in my heart. Definitely check out Anne and the French Kiss. It was so good. And the final book that I finished in the month of January is Homebrewed Christianity's Guide to Jesus, Lord, Liar, Lunatic, or Just Awesome. This is written by Trip Fuller, who is a friend of mine. He signed it for me. And this is a basic introduction to Christology. It is not going to tell you what to think or what to believe, but it's going to give you the tools to brew your own faith. If you've listened to the Homebrewed Christianity podcast, this is just like the podcast, except in a book form. I really enjoyed it. It's not too long. It was just enough, just great snippets that had some depth, but really began to unpack what it means to think about Jesus, who he is, how you interpret him, and how you would get to what you think. Like, do you start with the divinity part, the human part, why you start where you start? It's just a really great introduction. I would say if you are not already on Team Jesus, this might not be the first book I would pick up. If you are already in Team Jesus, thinking that you're on the J team, and you've done a little bit of reading and study, this would be a great continuation and it would help launch you into maybe some more academic study or some deeper reflection. The Homebrewed Christianity Guide to Jesus was a 4 out of 5 star read for me, and I thoroughly enjoyed finishing this book in January. So that's it. That's my 16 books in the month of January. I cannot believe I accomplished so many. It's crazy. I don't think I'll read nearly as many in the month of February. If you've read any of these books, I'd love to know what you think. Please let me know in the comments. If you have any suggestions for books that you think I would like based on what I've said, I would also love those. I hope you guys have a great week. Bye!